I never imagined that the love I once believed in would shatter so completely, leaving behind only the echoes of betrayal. My name is Michael Anderson, and until recently, I thought I had a future built on trust and loyalty with Rebecca, my wife of 7 years. I am writing this chapter as both a confession and a farewell to the life I thought I knew. It began subtly, like a shadow stretching at dusk. I first sensed something was off when Rebecca started coming home later than usual. I told myself it was the result of extra hours at work or an unexpected commitment with her friends. But then, the whispers of doubt grew louder with every unexplained phone call and every quiet evening spent in separate rooms of our once shared apartment. I began to notice the gentle hum of secret conversations, the furtive glances exchanged with a man I had never met, Marcus, a fitness trainer whose name would eventually haunt me like a bitter refrain. I still recall the day I found the evidence. It was an overcast afternoon, the sky a dull gray mirror of my mood. I had returned home early from a business trip, eager for a quiet dinner with Rebecca. As I stepped inside, the silence of the house struck me as unnervingly unfamiliar. In our living room, scattered across the coffee table, lay a set of receipts and a small notebook filled with dates and times. My heart pounded as I pieced together the narrative of betrayal, dates corresponding to early mornings at the gym, cryptic notes hinting at secret rendezvous, and even a mention of a planned big night out. The realization hit me like a tidal wave: I was not the only one sharing Rebecca's heart. The pain of betrayal is an odd companion. It creeps in slowly, a constant pressure that makes every breath feel like a struggle. I felt numb yet hyper-aware, as if my every sense was now attuned to the slightest deviation from normalcy. Every time I looked at Rebecca, I was reminded of the promises we once made. I found myself wandering through memories like an archivist in a ruined museum, examining relics of happier days, our first date, the gentle way her eyes shone with excitement when we planned our future, the soft murmur of shared dreams on quiet nights. All of those moments now seemed tainted, steeped in a sorrow that was as inevitable as the coming of night. I spent nights lying awake in our shared bed, listening to the sound of my own thoughts. I replayed every conversation, every gesture, seeking some clue that might have foretold this betrayal. The painful truth was that I had been blind to the signs, unwilling to accept that the woman I loved could harbor such a secret. I began to see Rebecca not as the vibrant, loving partner I once knew, but as someone hiding behind a mask of normalcy. It was as if I had been living in a meticulously crafted illusion, a facade that was now crumbling around me. Anger, too, began to take root in my heart. I was angry at myself for not noticing, angry at Rebecca for her deceit, and even angry at Marcus for intruding into a space that I had believed was sacred. The irony was unbearable: while I had trusted her implicitly, she had allowed herself to be seduced by the allure of something seemingly more exciting, more dangerous. And as I delved deeper into the truth, I discovered a detail that sent a chill down my spine. For 2 long years, Rebecca had maintained this affair. 2 years of shared lies, of stolen moments in dimly lit gyms and whispered plans in the dead of night. I remember a particular evening when I stumbled upon a text conversation that revealed even more of their sinister plan. In that exchange, Rebecca and Marcus spoke of an opportunity, a plan to not only continue their secret tryst but to take advantage of me financially. They had devised a scheme to rob me of my savings, to strip me of the life I had built with such care. The betrayal was not merely emotional, it was calculated and cold, an act of treachery planned in tandem with the man who had exploited my trust. The shock of this discovery forced me to confront a painful reality: the person I had given everything to was not only unfaithful but had been plotting my downfall all along. In the midst of this chaos, I had to find the strength to act. The shock of betrayal gave way to a clarity I had never experienced before. I started gathering every shred of evidence, preserving each message, receipt, and photograph as a testament to their deceit. With every piece of evidence, a newfound resolve began to form within me, a determination to reclaim control over my life. I made a decision that would change everything: would file for divorce. Even as the plans of Rebecca and Marcus swirled around me like a storm, I knew that I had to secure my own future. I could not let their treachery define the rest of my life. The process of separation was both cathartic and excruciating. In the quiet solitude of my study, I drafted my statement of intent to divorce. Every word was laced with a mixture of sorrow and resolve, a declaration of independence from a love that had turned toxic. I was aware that once the divorce was finalized, there would be no turning back, no chance to mend a bridge that had long been burned. And yet, as I signed the document, I felt a profound sense of relief mingled with a deep, enduring grief. I was saying goodbye not just to Rebecca, but to the future we had once envisioned together. As I sit here now, recounting the events that led to my heartbreak, I am filled with a complex cocktail of emotions. There is still a residue of love for the person I thought I knew, but it is now intermingled with a steely determination to never allow myself to be a victim again. The betrayal, as painful as it has been, has also been a harsh but necessary lesson in resilience. I have learned that love, when tainted by deceit, can only cause destruction. And while I mourn the loss of what could have been, I am also resolute in my belief that the truth, however bitter, must be confronted head-on. Now, with the divorce finalized and the evidence safely archived, I face an uncertain future. I know that Rebecca and Marcus still harbor plans to strip away the remnants of my once secure life. But I am no longer the naive man who believed in unconditional love. I have emerged from this crucible with my eyes open, ready to meet the challenges ahead with caution and strength. The finality of this chapter is not a celebration, but a necessary reckoning, a painful goodbye to a chapter of my life that has been irrevocably marred by betrayal. I write these words not only as a record of what transpired but as a reminder to myself and to anyone who might find solace in my story. The road to healing is paved with truth, however jagged and raw it may be. In exposing the darkest corners of our shared past, I hope to reclaim the narrative of my life, even as I step into an unknown future fraught with lingering hostility and unresolved tension. The bitter irony is that while Rebecca and Marcus may think they have triumphed by plotting to rob me of my financial stability, they have underestimated the strength of a man who refuses to be a victim of betrayal. My heart may be broken, and my trust shattered, but I am determined to build a new life, one defined not by loss and deception, but by resilience and the relentless pursuit of truth. In the weeks following the divorce filing, my life felt like a tightrope stretched over an abyss. Every step I took was measured against the memories of betrayal and the ever-looming threat of Rebecca and Marcus's calculated plans. I had retreated into a world of relentless vigilance, where every unexpected call or glance from a stranger carried the weight of a hidden agenda. It was as if I had become a detective in my own life, piecing together clues that would expose the true extent of their conspiracy. The revelation of their scheme to drain my finances had shattered the last remnants of trust one once held in our shared past. I found myself obsessively reviewing our joint accounts, meticulously documenting every transaction, every suspicious withdrawal, all in an attempt to protect what was rightfully mine. In the dead of night, when silence descended like a shroud over my apartment, I would pore over bank statements and legal documents, my eyes scanning for any sign of a plot to steal my future away. The numbers on the page were no longer mere digits, they had transformed into a battleground upon which my dignity and hard-earned livelihood were being contested. Amid this chaos, I couldn't shake the thought that Rebecca's betrayal was not just an act of personal infidelity, but a prelude to a larger, more destructive plan. The evidence I had gathered, texts, receipts, and that damning notebook, spoke of a relationship that was both intimate and meticulously orchestrated. Marcus, the suave fitness trainer with a magnetic charm, was no ordinary intruder in our lives. His presence represented an embodiment of everything I had believed to be invincible, the promise of physical perfection and a lifestyle that I had never quite been able to achieve. Yet, beneath his polished exterior lay a cold ambition, a readiness to turn deceit into profit at my expense. One brisk autumn morning, while I was walking through the park lost in thought, I noticed a figure watching me from a distance. The person's eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, and for a moment, I felt the prickle of being surveilled. I couldn't help but wonder if this was another piece of the puzzle, a sign that my every move was now under scrutiny. The paranoia crept in slowly, like the chill of early winter, making it hard to distinguish between genuine threats and my own anxious imagination. I resolved, however, that I would not allow fear to paralyze me. Instead, I dedicated myself to learning every possible detail about the scheme being hatched against me. In the midst of my investigation, I reached out to a trusted friend, Jonathan, who had once been my business partner. Jonathan had a knack for numbers and legal intricacies, and I knew that his insight would be invaluable in navigating this murky territory. Over several long conversations in his modest study, cluttered with books and legal journals, we formulated a plan. Together, we began scrutinizing my financial records with a fine-toothed comb. We uncovered patterns that confirmed our suspicions, unexplained transfers and unusual spending activities that coincided with Rebecca's absences. It was as if a hidden ledger had been keeping score of every moment of betrayal. Meanwhile, the emotional toll of the situation grew heavier with each passing day. I found myself oscillating between a desire for revenge and a need for closure. Every memory of Rebecca's laughter or the sparkle in her eyes was now tainted by the knowledge of her deceit. I recalled the times when I had confided in her about my dreams and aspirations, only to be met with silence or half-hearted reassurances. That silence had morphed into complicity. The pain was not just in the betrayal, it was in the realization that the person who had once been my confidant and partner had become an architect of my downfall. There came a moment of reckoning when I stumbled upon a new piece of evidence, a series of encrypted emails on Rebecca's laptop, which she had left forgotten on the dining table one evening. In them, I discovered detailed discussions between her and Marcus about how to exploit my trust, and more disturbingly, about how they planned to liquidate my assets without me ever seeing a dime. The cold, methodical tone of their words sent shivers down my spine. Each email was a testament to the premeditation of their scheme, a scheme that aimed to strip me not only of financial security but of my very identity as a provider and a man who had always prided himself on being in control. Confronted with this damning evidence, I wrestled with a decision: should I confront Rebecca directly, or let the legal processes take their course? I chose the latter, reasoning that any confrontation in the heat of betrayal would only lend them an opportunity to further manipulate the situation. Instead, I shared the evidence with my attorney, who advised me to remain composed and let the system handle the fallout. As I prepared for what would be a long and arduous legal battle, I felt a curious mixture of resignation and defiance. I was determined to fight back, not just for my finances, but for my self-respect and the sanctity of truth. Yet, despite the cold pragmatism of legal advice, the emotional scars ran deep. I found myself haunted by dreams of Rebecca and Marcus plotting in the dead of night, their faces contorted with greed and malice. In these nightmares, I was an unwilling spectator to their treachery, a ghost trapped in a web of lies. It was during one of these restless nights that I realized that the conspiracy had become more than just a matter of money. It had eroded the very foundation of the life I had built, leaving behind a trail of shattered trust and broken promises. Determined not to let this betrayal define my future, I began to take small steps toward reclaiming my identity. I enrolled in a local community college to study finance, an ironic twist, considering that my life had become a lesson in financial vulnerability. I started attending therapy sessions, hoping to untangle the emotional knots that had formed in the wake of the revelation. Every day, I took deliberate steps to rebuild my life, even as the storm of conspiracy and deceit raged on in the background. The tension in the air was palpable, a constant reminder that my past was not yet fully behind me. I knew that Rebecca and Marcus would not rest until their plan was executed, and I had to remain one step ahead. As I prepared for the inevitable legal confrontations and the public unraveling of our private lives, I vowed that I would not be reduced to a victim in their sordid drama. Instead, I would use every tool at my disposal, knowledge, resilience, and the support of those who still believed in me, to ensure that their treachery would be met with unyielding resistance. Now, as I sit at my desk, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating my battle-worn documents, I reflect on the gathering storm. The calm before the storm has long passed. Now, I stand in the eye of the hurricane, a solitary figure determined to weather the tempest. I have come to understand that true strength is not measured by the absence of pain, but by the courage to confront it head-on. The path ahead is fraught with challenges, yet I am resolved to face them with a clear mind and a steadfast heart. In this crucible of betrayal and retribution, I have discovered that the scars we bear serve as reminders of the battles we have fought, and the lessons we have learned. Every betrayal, every calculated act of deceit, has propelled me toward a future defined by my own terms. The storm may rage on, but I have found solace in the knowledge that I am no longer the man who once believed in blind trust. I have awakened to a reality where every shadow hides a secret, and every smile conceals a lie. And as I prepare to meet the next chapter of this tumultuous journey, I am ready to reclaim what is rightfully mine, a future free from deception, where the truth shines as the only guiding light. In the weeks that followed my deep dive into the web of deceit, the tension in my life escalated to an unbearable crescendo. Every day felt like a precarious balance between an impending storm and the fragile peace I had carved out amidst the chaos. I was no longer a passive victim in this sordid tale. I had become a man on a mission, determined to expose the full extent of Rebecca and Marcus's treachery and to ensure that their plan to rob me of everything would fail. One cool evening, as twilight seeped into the corners of my modest study, I received a call from Jonathan. His voice, usually calm and measured, was laced with urgency. He had uncovered a new set of anomalies in the financial records that we had meticulously examined together. There were sudden, inexplicable transfers from my account, small amounts that, when added up, formed a disturbing pattern. It appeared that the conspirators were not only plotting a grand heist of my savings but were testing the waters, siphoning funds in a series of microtransactions designed to go unnoticed. Jonathan's discovery was a stark reminder that the danger was far from over. Every one of these small withdrawals was a calculated move in a larger, more insidious scheme. That night, I sat in the dim light of my study, the soft hum of the city outside mingling with the relentless tapping of rain on the window. The evidence was irrefutable. Rebecca and Marcus were executing their plan with cold precision. My mind raced as I considered the possibility that they might escalate their tactics at any moment. The thought of my hard-earned assets being stripped away piece by piece was intolerable. I felt a burning need to confront the situation head-on, to dismantle their machinations before they could reach the point of no return. The following morning, I decided it was time to take the next step. I scheduled a meeting with my attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Evelyn, who had been my rock throughout this ordeal. Evelyn listened intently as I laid out the new evidence and expressed my growing concern over the series of unauthorized transactions. She assured me that we had ample grounds to not only halt these suspicious withdrawals but also to file additional charges that could potentially expose the full extent of the conspiracy. Her pragmatic approach, coupled with a steely resolve, bolstered my determination. I left her office with a renewed sense of purpose, armed with legal strategies and a detailed roadmap to protect my financial interests. Armed with Evelyn's guidance, I began to track every lead. I pored over bank statements, cross-referencing dates and amounts, and correlating them with Rebecca's absences and Marcus's sporadic appearances. The pattern was unsettlingly clear. They were siphoning off my money in a series of well-timed moves, each one small enough to fly under the radar, yet together forming a significant drain on my assets. The meticulousness of their plan left me both impressed and enraged. How could the woman I once trusted so implicitly, alongside a man I had never really known, plan such a calculated attack on my life? The more I investigated, the more I felt like I was walking a tightrope above an ever-widening chasm of betrayal. I began to receive anonymous tips, cryptic messages left on my email and even a note slipped under my door. They hinted at a forthcoming move, a critical juncture in their plan where everything would come to a head. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that each step I took was mirrored by their covert maneuvers. The sense of paranoia was pervasive, yet I refused to let it cripple me. Instead, it sharpened my focus, driving me to be ever more vigilant and to prepare for a confrontation that seemed both inevitable and long overdue. Late one night, as I sat at my desk surrounded by documents and evidence, the phone rang. The caller ID was blocked, a detail that sent a shiver down my spine. With a deep breath, I answered, expecting another piece of the puzzle or perhaps a veiled threat. Instead, I heard a calm, almost measured voice. "Michael, you're getting too close," the voice said. There was no name, no hint of emotion beyond a chilling detachment. "Back off, and things will settle down." The words echoed in my mind long after the call ended, a grim reminder that my every move was being monitored and that the conspirators were willing to use intimidation to silence me. The threat did not deter me, it only reinforced my resolve. I increased my efforts, consulting with financial experts and cybersecurity professionals to safeguard my accounts and trace the origins of the unauthorized transfers. Evelyn and I prepared to take legal action, gathering every shred of evidence into a dossier that would serve as an impenetrable wall against any further assaults on my financial security. Each document, every email, and every recorded conversation was a step towards reclaiming control of my life. Amid these preparations, I began to reflect on the man I had become. The transformation was as painful as it was necessary. Gone was the naive husband who had trusted implicitly, replaced by a cautious, steely-eyed survivor determined to extract justice from a system that had once seemed so impenetrable. The betrayal had awakened in me a fierce resilience, a desire not just to protect what was mine, but to ensure that such treachery would never again catch me off guard. The confrontation with the conspirators loomed large in my thoughts, each day stretching out as a silent countdown to an inevitable clash. I envisioned a scenario where I would finally confront Rebecca and Marcus, laying bare all the evidence and forcing them to reckon with the consequences of their actions. Yet, even as I nurtured these thoughts, I was acutely aware that a direct confrontation might play into their hands, offering them an opportunity to manipulate the narrative further. Instead, I chose to let the legal process take its course, confident that the weight of the evidence would eventually force them into the open. As the days turned into a whirlwind of legal meetings, forensic audits, and sleepless nights, I began to see the situation for what it truly was, a meticulously orchestrated attack on my identity and livelihood. The intricate web of deceit was not just about money, it was about power, control, and the erosion of trust. And while the scars of betrayal ran deep, each new piece of evidence forged a path toward a future where I would no longer be defined by their treachery. In the quiet moments, when the world outside seemed to fade into insignificance, I allowed myself a brief respite, a moment to grieve for the life that had been lost and the trust that had been shattered. But these moments of vulnerability were fleeting, quickly replaced by a steely determination to move forward, to fight back against the injustice that had so profoundly upended my world. I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, and that the final confrontation with Rebecca and Marcus was only a matter of time. Yet, I was no longer afraid. I had found strength in my pain and clarity in my purpose. And so, as I write these words in the dim glow of my study, I brace myself for the coming storm, a storm that promised to reveal the full extent of the betrayal and force a reckoning that neither party could escape. The confrontation was not just about reclaiming my assets, it was about reclaiming my identity, my dignity, and the trust one had so naively bestowed upon those I loved. The storm was gathering, and as the first cracks of its fury began to appear on the horizon, I stood resolute, ready to face whatever came next with unwavering determination. The day of reckoning arrived without fanfare, a cold, clear morning that held the weight of finality in its crisp air. It was as if the universe had conspired to strip away any remnants of illusion, leaving only the raw, unvarnished truth in its wake. I woke early, my mind a whirlwind of determination and lingering sorrow, knowing that the final act of this tragic drama was about to unfold. In the days leading up to this moment, the legal battle had reached its climax. Evidence that I had painstakingly gathered over months lay in organized piles on my desk, each document a testament to the betrayal that had torn my life apart. My attorney, Evelyn, had worked tirelessly to build an unassailable case. Now, as I prepared for the ultimate confrontation, I felt a bitter mix of vindication and regret, a sense of justice tempered by the undeniable pain of lost love. The courthouse loomed in the distance, its imposing structure a symbol of authority and finality. I arrived with a measured calm, though beneath the surface, my heart was pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. Every step I took felt like a step away from the life I had once known, a life that had been full of promises and dreams, now shattered by the duplicity of the woman I had once called my wife. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with subdued tension. Rebecca sat at the defense table, her face a mask of cold detachment. Beside her, Marcus exuded an air of smug confidence, as if he had anticipated this outcome all along. Their eyes occasionally met mine across the room, laden with unspoken challenges and a hint of resentment. It was clear that their scheme had been built not only on betrayal, but on a shared ambition to rewrite our shared history. Yet today, their calculated plans would come crashing down. Evelyn's voice resonated clearly as she laid out the evidence, meticulous records of unauthorized financial transfers, damning text messages, and even the incriminating emails that detailed their plan to exploit my trust and rob me of what I had earned. Each piece of evidence was a blow against the carefully constructed facade that Rebecca and Marcus had maintained for 2 long years. As the details were recounted, a murmur of disbelief rippled through the courtroom. No longer could they hide behind charming smiles or deceptive assurances. At the center of it all, I sat, a man who had been betrayed, deceived, and ultimately forced to confront the harsh realities of love turned sour. The pain was still there, a lingering echo of what might have been, but it was now channeled into a resolve that was unyielding. I spoke, my voice steady but filled with a deep, unspoken grief, recounting the days of trust and the slow unraveling of our shared life. Each word was a release, a catharsis that stripped away the veneer of calm I had tried to maintain throughout this ordeal. The judge listened intently, her expression one of quiet sympathy as she absorbed the narrative of betrayal and calculated greed. When she finally spoke, her words were measured and authoritative. She acknowledged the severity of the misconduct and the lengths to which Rebecca and Marcus had gone to manipulate the situation. In a swift, decisive ruling, she declared that the divorce was to proceed, that the assets and accounts would be secured, and that the fraudulent financial transactions would be reversed. The finality of the judgment sent a shiver through me, a confirmation that the long, painful chapter was finally closing. But the courtroom was not merely a venue for legal justice, it was the stage for a personal showdown that had been years in the making. As the judge adjourned the session, I felt an almost surreal sense of liberation. The oppressive weight of betrayal was lifted, replaced by a cautious optimism that perhaps, in the aftermath of such devastation, I could rebuild my life. Yet, as I gathered my documents and prepared to leave, I sensed a last act of defiance from Rebecca and Marcus, a silent acknowledgement that their carefully orchestrated plan had been thwarted. Outside the courthouse, the world seemed to pause for a moment. I caught a glimpse of Rebecca as she hurried away with Marcus at her side, their heads bowed and voices low in a hurried conversation that I could not decipher. In that brief, fleeting moment, I saw not the woman I had once loved, but a stranger, someone who had willingly sacrificed our shared past for a promise of something more lucrative, more exciting. The realization stung, yet it also cemented the truth: our marriage was irreparably broken, a casualty of betrayal and avarice. I took a solitary walk along a quiet street, the cool morning air mingling with the last vestiges of my sorrow. My thoughts turned inward as I reflected on the twisted path that had led me here. The love I had once cherished was now a distant memory, eclipsed by the harsh realities of infidelity and manipulation. But within that painful reflection lay the seeds of new beginnings. I resolved that from the ashes of this ruin, I would forge a new identity, one built on the hard-earned lessons of betrayal, but also on a future where I would never again allow myself to be taken advantage of. In the days that followed, the public nature of the proceeding stirred mixed reactions from those who knew me and even from acquaintances of Rebecca. Whispers followed me in social circles, a blend of pity and admiration for my steadfastness in the face of deceit. Yet, even as I navigated this new landscape, I knew that the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. Every day, I carried the weight of lost trust and the harsh reminder that sometimes, the ones you love can be the very ones who bring about your downfall. At home, I began the slow process of reclaiming my personal space, a space that had once been shared with another, now singular and solely mine. I reinstalled the walls of security, both digital and emotional, and took deliberate steps to ensure that my future was guarded against any similar intrusion. Therapy sessions became a regular part of my routine, where I explored the complex emotions that swirled within me: anger, sorrow, regret, and the budding strength of newfound independence. In quiet moments of introspection, I allowed myself to mourn not only the dissolution of my marriage but also the loss of an identity that had been entwined with the love I once believed in. I remembered the man I had been before all this, optimistic, trusting, perhaps even a little naive. But as I stared into the mirror, I saw instead a man tempered by fire, hardened by betrayal yet not defeated. There was a resolute dignity in my eyes, a silent promise to never let the echoes of the past dictate the future. The final severance of ties was marked by a last exchange of words. In a brief, charged encounter at the lawyer's office after the judgment, Rebecca's eyes met mine, and in that silent moment, the entire history of our shared life, filled with love, deception, and unhealed wounds, passed between us. There was no anger, no bitterness in her gaze, only a resigned acknowledgement of the inevitability of our parting. And in that moment, I knew that our story had truly reached its conclusion, a final, irrevocable severance of what we once had. As I stepped out into the fading light of the day, a quiet determination filled me. The hostile dissolution of our union was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter defined by self-reliance and cautious optimism. The betrayal by Rebecca and Marcus had left deep scars, but it had also forged within me an unyielding resolve, a promise that I would emerge from this darkness stronger, wiser, and more vigilant than ever before. In the end, the final reckoning was not merely a legal triumph but a personal emancipation. The painful lessons of betrayal had stripped away illusions and left me with the raw, unfiltered truth of who I was and what I deserved. And though the path ahead was uncertain, I embraced it with the knowledge that I was now the master of my own destiny, a destiny built not on the broken promises of the past, but on the promise of a future where truth, integrity, and self-respect reign supreme.